So let's discuss the brand new C64 plug and play. Now I know a lot of you guys who come to my channel and come to other YouTubers' channels probably tired of talking about these plug and play systems and these mini systems because there is a handful of these out there floating around the market, and in the last 2 or 3 years for some reason these systems are getting relatively popular and so many companies are deciding to actually make these actual products. But in today's video I do want to discuss a brand new one that just came to the market. I want to discuss the upcoming C64 plug-and-play system, and that may actually sound familiar to a lot of you because they did actually make a plug-and-play system last year for the C64. But pretty much what this one is trying to do, it's pretty much trying to take the one from last year and pretty much make it better. So this is going to be the better version. Some people had some flaws with the one that came out last year, and I guess the company admitted that there was some problems with that one. So they're pretty much re-releasing it, but they're making it a whole bunch better, and I do want to discuss this. So it is going to be for the C64. If you don't know anything about the C64, for all you kiddos that weren't around back then, it is called the Commodore 64, and the Commodore 64 was pretty much an actual computer, kind of like a Windows computer, kind of like a Mac computer. It was a computer way back in the day, and it's going to be preloaded with a whole bunch of games on it, which is pretty cool. But it looks like they're changing the design of this C64 plug-and-play system when this actually comes out on the market. The biggest thing that they're actually going to be changing on this Commodore 64 plug-and-play system is the fact that now it will be full size instead of a mini, unfortunately. But the reason for this is that the keyboard is actually going to be functional, so it should work just like it did way back in the day if you ever used a Commodore 64. So that's pretty cool that they're actually doing it with this actual system. Now I don't know how well the keys are actually going to feel when you actually type with these keys, and I'm not sure if you can type in commands with these keys, but I'm assuming if you can actually use the keys at all and they're fully functional, most likely you'll be able to type in commands and able to maybe select the games that you want to select when it comes to this keyboard, when it comes to the C64. So that's pretty cool. So there is some pretty cool stuff about this. Like for instance, unfortunately the highest output that this thing is going to be allowed to output to your HDMI TV is going to be 720p. So don't expect things like 1080p or 4K if you wanted to play C64 games in 720p or 1080p. That's off the question. And then the coolest thing about this thing, besides the preloaded games that are going to be installed with this brand new C64, is the fact that you will be able to sideload your own ROMs on this thing. Yep, you heard me right, and that's absolutely fantastic. So that pretty much means you'll have pretty much any C64 game you want under the sun. So anything that was made for the C64 will actually be able to run on this thing, and I think that's just super cool that they're even allowing something like this. Apparently there's going to be like a USB port on the side of this C64, and on the side of this thing you'll be able to actually plug in a USB flash drive, and then you'll be able to sideload your own ROMs. Now I'm not sure how hard it is going to be to sideload your own ROMs when it comes to this thing, but just the fact you'll be able to sideload your own ROMs onto this thing, I think that's very cool in itself. I think also it's going to allow you to load ROMs, not just C64 ROMs as well when it comes to loading your own ROMs. You can actually do VIC-20, and of course VIC-20 I'm pretty sure was made by the same company who made the C64. I know something about these systems, so it is cool you do have the choice between C64 and VIC-20. So that's very cool. And then there's also going to be pricing for this system. It looks like the C64, this one specifically, is coming out December 5, 2019. Now I'm not sure if that's set in stone, but according to this article it does say December 5, 2019, which is very cool stuff. But here is the killer thing about this C64 plug-and-play system. It looks like this one that is coming out this year supposedly is going to be $120, and I know that's a lot to ask for, especially you have to take in consideration maybe not a lot of people know what the C64 is, and maybe some people never played this. So for the $120 just to play this, I would say you'd really have to be a hardcore C64 fan. If you're really not a hardcore C64 fan, then I don't really know what to tell you when it comes to this system, because, well, 120 is kind of expensive, especially when you can get other options on the market like the NES Classic, the SNES Classic, the upcoming Sega Genesis Classic, the TurboGrafx Classic. There's so many other classics on the market that are probably cheaper than this, that you probably already know the games too, that it would probably make more sense to buy one of those systems instead of buying the C64 plug-and-play system just because, well, you may not even be familiar with these games, and I will have to admit some of these games probably didn't age all that good. So that does kind of suck that this thing, for some reason, they decided to go with $120. I'm not too happy with the price here. Maybe they could have went with $90, maybe $85, but I understand maybe it just cost them too much to manufacture this thing, or I don't really know what goes behind making this thing, but either way, they did decide to make it $120, which is kind of expensive. Now, the one thing I'm very excited about is the fact that they are still trying to really focus on the C64 plug and play, and it's very cool, and it will give people a chance who never played the C64 in the first place to play a lot of these games and a lot of this stuff on the C64, so that's very cool. And I'm always one person that definitely likes companies re-releasing these old systems to make these plug and play type systems. I've always thought the plug and play type style systems were very cool, like the NES Classic, SNES Classic, etc., because I think it's a very easy way to get modern people to play these things. They don't have to go out and buy cartridges, they don't have to go out and buy aging systems, and it's pretty much a nice way to preserve a lot of these old systems without you having to go to the internet, find the emulator, find the ROMs, all this stuff. And we all know that's a great area too. Is it legal? Is it not legal when it comes to those type of things? But these are always nice systems because you can just plug this in your TV. You'll know you paid for the ROMs, you paid for the legal, you paid for it legally, and you don't have to worry about, is it a gray area, is it a not gray area? You don't have to worry about, is your computer going to be able to handle it? How bad is the emulator? How bad is the emulation? Most of the times companies actually make these, they actually do a pretty good job of making sure all the emulation and everything on these plug-and-play systems pretty much work, and that's why I love these. And especially something with specifically the C64. If you do go back to a C64 today, you guys know it's pretty clunky to use a C64, and that doesn't guarantee that your C64 will play all the games that you want it to play. It doesn't guarantee. It's hard to type in the commands and things like this. And honestly, another reason I'm super excited for this system specifically is the fact that I did grow up with the C64. It wasn't my first computer growing up. The first computer I ever grew up with was the Windows 95 system. That was the first operating system and the first computer I ever had. I think I had a Dell with Windows 95 on it, but it is still pretty cool that they're re-releasing this, and I do have some nostalgia for some of the C64 games because my father did grow up with the C64, so it was pretty cool back in the day. I did get to experience the C64, and a lot of this will speak to me, and it's just very cool that they are preserving something that in time could be lost just because all the old hardware will fail. It is hard to actually use a C64 in the long run just because you do have to know commands. Sometimes getting it to work can be finicky, so it is nice that we are finally getting the C64, and it looks like we are getting a re-release of last year's product. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.